Hello, everyone. Michelangelo Mortellaro with Mortellaro Law. Today, I am very excited to be here with two guests. We normally do one, but we're getting double the fun today. We have Michael Valdez, who is a certified financial planner, and we also have Jason Sampson, who is a business law attorney. And I love these guys, and I love working with these guys because we have quite often worked together in a team environment to help out our business owner clients. And normally we would be doing these things in more of a live seminar, but since we are all digital these days, we figured we would put out some good educational material for business owners who may not have thought about the importance of succession, transition, and exit planning. And quite a while back on my Facebook at Mortellaro Law, I had posted an article that between 72 and 80% of business owners who run successful businesses don't have any sort of succession or estate planning with respect to their business. And when they are questioned as to why that's happening, the answer unanimously is, well, I'm always so busy working on my business and keeping it, growing it and keeping it healthy that I really never thought about it and I haven't had time. And in the general estate planning world, we hear that all the time as well. Well, I haven't had time until something happens to you and then you wish you had made time. So we try to be proactive with our clients. And when we're talking about exit and transition planning, there's no one answer, and it really needs to be a collaborative team effort. So, Michael Valdez, we'll get to him in just a moment, but he does a lot on the financial planning side on strategies and tools and sometimes financial products that can be used in this transition planning. Jason Sampson does a great job on the business entity side, also on the operating agreement side. A lot can be put into an operating agreement that will make a smoother transition, less likely that someone gets frozen out or that there is problems down the road. And then ultimately where it lands back in my lap is if we do our job properly in the succession and exit planning, in theory, if one of the shareholders or the owner even dies, we want a mechanism that is automated that will extract the value of that business, bring it into the estate, but then crucially important that we don't have that estate go through probate, which, probate, I always say, is a sucker's game that makes lawyers money, even though I do it for a living. There's no need to go through probate. In fact, the only reason you go through it is if you haven't taken the time to plan around it. So if we can maximize the efficiency of your business interest and your business equity to get down to your beneficiaries without the use of probate, it's in everyone's best interest. So the team approach works well because while all three of us are pretty darn good at what we do, we don't have the skill set that the others have, or even the licensing in the case of a CFP. So it really takes a village and takes a team of everybody understanding, and often your CPA would be another member of this team to make sure that the entity creation and the operating agreement setup, that we have a way, sometimes using financial products and financial guidance to get this process done. And then ultimately there will be some taxes paid to bring on the CPA to make sure that that is the least amount of taxes. And then, of course, back to the estate plan to avoid probate. So, Michael, I'm going to start with you. I've known you for over a decade. We're finishing up a book together, work in progress, 4 years. We're dedicated to finish this thing up sooner than later. But I know in our conversations a couple things. One, in full disclosure, I use both of these gentlemen. I am their client. And so I'm not promoting them just because I think they're good at what they're doing. I actually use them. So, Michael, for me, what you've done, just to give an overview, not only on exit and transition planning, you have helped set up a qualified plan for my firm, which allows us to put away money for not only myself, but all of my employees in the form of 401k and defined contribution plan, if I'm saying that properly. And at the same time, I was able to save taxes. So for business owners who are thinking not only about exit and transition, but just generally running your business well, implementing a qualified plan or two might be a great thing. Michael can help you out with that. But I know, Michael, that you are a co-founder of the Business Transition Council. Give us a high-level overview of what that is and what is your role in that entity.
All right, and before I answer that question, I need to identify myself to make sure I'm compliant. I am a registered representative with LPL Financial, and I am a LPL investment advisor representative. I am the branch manager for Synergy Wealth Alliance, which is a firm of about 20 financial advisors across the Southeast who work together to work with business owners and other clients. Now, to answer the question about Business Transition Council, we pulled this together with my co-founder, a CPA, and also a CFP, Dan Maloney, a former Big Four partner, and we built the Business Transition Council, or the Business Transformation Council, as we sometimes refer to it internally, as a learning organization from Peter Senge, the MIT professor. So that being the case, what we do is we pull all the professionals who speak to working with a privately held business owner, from psychologists to certified financial planners, to different types of attorneys, to business consultants, to marketing people, to business coaches, and all those are part of our group. And for well over a decade, we've been meeting, doing nothing but talking about, and I know this is barn burning information for some, but for us, we find it very exciting. We spend about 2 hours a month talking about succession, exit, and transition, and helping people make their businesses so they're repeatable, sustainable, scalable, and transferable. And of course, the role I play on this particular team, and how I've worked with both of you in the past, is we're really working through the strategies and some of the thoughts about where you're going. And succession, exit, and transition really is a circle. It's not a linear journey, and you're working on all those components at the same time. One of the places where I can bring and help with the business owners, particularly with asset protection, is working with the risk mitigation products like life insurance or disability income or long-term care, either in helping plan for keeping key employees, or actually making sure there's liquidity when the event arises, if it's disability of a key partner, or if it's the passing of one of the key members or the partners. And of course, what I've learned after more than 3 decades of working with gentlemen like yourself, tax attorneys and estate planning attorneys, is that what I do is completely ineffective in a vacuum. The only way it becomes effective for the business owner is when we collaborate and we take all our best ideas and we pull them together, benefiting the client. So hopefully that wasn't too long, Michelangelo, to answer your question.
No. So to give you guys an overview, the goal of today is to just introduce the players that are on our team, and then introduce some high-level concepts. And then over the next coming weeks and months, we will be doing additional kind of breakout sessions with Michael and Jason to really drill down on some of the concepts, some of the strategies, with the, I guess, the disclaimer on all of us that what we talk about in these videos are generalities. They're not intended to be financial advice. They're not intended to be legal advice for your specific situation. But when we talk about theories, concepts, and strategies, it is then crucially important that we give you enough to kind of get you interested in the topic and the subject, but then you reach out, whether it's to one of us or to whoever you may choose to work with, to make sure that these strategies we've talked about really work for your specific situation. Michael, tell me, just give me the teaser on future breakout sessions. What are some high-level concepts that business owners should be working with a CFP to deal with the disability, incapacity, and exit transition strategies that the CFP brings to the table that I don't as the estate planner, and that Jason doesn't as the business law attorney?
Well, we have just lived through and are currently living in a time that in years past, I've been able to talk to clients about events that come literally out of the blue, the black swan events that you really don't expect. And when they happen, everything shifts. Sometimes that could be your partner going water skiing over the weekend on the lake, and it turns out that they fell while they were doing a slalom and they hit the cypress tree, and now they can't talk, and they're in a coma. And so what happens to the business from that point? What happens if instead of being in a coma, the partner passed away? Most entrepreneurs wear many, 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 many hats. And so they're driving the marketing, they're driving the sales, they're driving the operations, they're doing the accounting. And even if they have people reporting to them, those individuals really don't work independently. So one of the things we want to talk about in the future is how to build your business so that you can step away from it. Because it's only when you are able to step away from the day-to-day operations and empower your team do you really get true flexibility and true freedom from the reason that you ultimately started your business.
All right. And I can attest that that is always Michael's advice. He keeps trying to get me to figure out a mousetrap to step away. And probably like most of his clients, I don't listen because I'm in the trenches every day. But I know it's good advice. One day I'll take it, I promise, as soon as we finish that book. So I want to pivot now to Jason Sampson. I've known Jason for a while now. And again, I'm a client of his. I've had him create some entities for me. He's working on one right now for additional business entities. And I really liked him from the day I met him, in that I think we have a similar way, and Michael as well, a similar way that we treat our clients, that we view our business, and that we all take a holistic approach to whatever information and guidance we're giving to our clients, with the understanding that, again, we're great at what we do, but we also are cognizant that that there are certain times that we're not the quarterback for our clients, and that we may do what we do and run our special teams, to borrow a sports analogy, very well, but we need other special teams to come in and coordinate, because only then do things really work. The first time I had lunch with Jason Sampson, I asked him the very direct question: how many of your business owners have coordinated their business planning with their estate planning to make sure that if they get hit by the beer truck, that their business doesn't get shut down, that they're not having to deal with partners in adverse situations, and that their business isn't going through probate and potentially getting shut down for 6 to 12 months. And I don't remember the exact figure, but it was somewhere like well over 90% of my businesses have never even thought about or taken any steps towards estate planning. So we saw that synergy, that my business owner clients now can have a great resource in Jason. His business owner clients can have a great resource for estate planning. We bring in the CFP for asset protection strategies. Jason and I also do a number of LLCs. We can do domestic and offshore asset protection trusts. There's a million things we can do for business owners. So Jason, kind of going over to you, a quick background on yourself on the business law side.
Sure. So thank you. Well, thank you for today's forum. Came into this world, and Venerable Law has just been in existence now, coming on 2 years, or I'm sorry, just celebrated its 2 years in March. Been practicing for more than 20 years, came from, one of the biggest law firms in the world, working with some of the biggest corporations in the world. That sounds important to a lot of folks, but what I really saw at that level is, there is all sorts of problems at many different levels, whether it's a mom and pop up to a Fortune 100 company. And just like you're saying, we've all talked about, if you're making the widget, that's what you're really good at. And if you're successful, that's what you've done. And everything else is a second thought. I don't care who you are, how good you are, that's the fact. And us professionals here today are victim of that as well. And we can each follow each other's advice a little bit better. I will share with you, and what Michelangelo nicely left out in that intro was, he also asked me specifically that question about me and my firm for the succession plan. And it was kind of a look of shock and awe when I said, yeah, pretty much nothing. So I understand firsthand how important it is to have these professionals and this team around you, because I practice what I preach and I use their advice as well. So Venerable was started with the idea of, I had spent the last 4 years of my career at a very big firm, traveling the globe. Sounded cool, wasn't that cool. And it was really like herding cats. And it was a lot of help me, help you, speaking to this committee, that committee. And I wanted to get back to work with actual individual owners. Who are the principals? Is it mom and pop kettle, whoever it is? If you're the influencer making that decision, that's who I want to work with. Let me help you step ahead of the curve, get in front of the danger. Let's structure it so we can actually work with your estate planning attorney, work with your financial planner, work with your CPA. What we found, and I know everyone on this video forum right now will agree, you could have a dream team. You could have literally, call whatever you want. I've got the best, of this, the best of that. Put them together on an all-star team and see how they play. That does not make the greatest team. That does not make the greatest recipe for success. And really what I found, and it was very shocking to me, and it really took, I'd had these concepts in a lot of different ways, but sitting down with Michelangelo was the first time that's, synergy is always an interesting word, right? Like that relationship happened and you're like, wow, this is someone that's really looking out for the client in the same way. And this is something we can talk about. Because I can assure you, for my 18 plus years of practice before that, I did my little silo. This is what I did. I knew this, and I would say, go talk to these other people and figure it out. Well, what does that mean? You've created a plan that isn't worth the paper it's written on because it's put on a shelf. So what we've seen now, especially in this downturn or, more time at home, is people really thinking about, what does this all mean? Let's take that, corporate document, that shareholder agreement, those articles that I haven't looked at in forever. Let's blow the dust off of them and actually look at them. Okay, so what does it mean? Well, have I even ever showed this to my estate planning attorney? Does he even know that I have a business? Does he even know, he or she, sorry. Do they even understand what I have over here? If these two things if those are actually still questions to you, you don't have a plan. You don't have any sort of value into what you've provided already. And I will go to say, I'll even go further. You haven't gotten what you paid for, because unless and until everybody's talking and understands and there's actually a cohesive plan, you really don't have much. Because, and I was speaking to Michael before this as we were kind of talking about today's topics. I had a client recently, and it was one of the best interactions I've had with their CPA. I was very steadfast. I loved this structure for them. It worked out great until she said, well, what about these tax consequences over here? And I was like, well, that's a great point. So I conceded a little bit. And I said, well, that's not, the most protection I ever want to see. I set it out in front of the client and said, listen, if we're talking belts and suspenders and maybe a couple more suspenders, that's where I want to be as a lawyer. This is belts and suspenders level 1. And I was looking at level 2. Still protecting you, still going to really get you for most of what you accomplish. But, lawyers hate liability, and we're going to, wrap you up in a nice protective titanium blanket so you can never do anything. Well, the titanium blanket is great shield, and it'll shield you against a lot of things. But what it's not going to protect you against is that tax liability. And if I created more for you just because I want to be a little bit more protective and because my ego won't allow me to talk to that CPA, then I've done you a disservice. And until you bring that team together, you aren't able to have those conversations. Again, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And the areas that I'm not going into are some of the individuals that we have here. And I know I'm not touching tax advice, and I know enough to be dangerous. Each one of us is great at what we do, but until you come together, that's when you get the full-fledged, real great opportunity to represent clients where you want to be. You want to be in that sweet spot. And it's funny, I did see one of the comments online. I will comment, not call anybody out by name, but talking about Michelangelo talking like a lawyer. Of course, we're going to give our disclaimers. We went to law school, and this is what we're trained to do. I like to refer to the law profession as trained monkeys. I won't go too much further in that. Maybe we'll break that out in a later session. But one of the things I love about talking to Michelangelo and Michael, is when Michelangelo and I are talking, it has zero to do with lawyers. It has zero to do with legalese. It has zero to do with, let's see how much I can talk above the next person, and all about, cutting to the chase and probably more expletives than you want to hear in a normal conversation. But, we're talking like, normal people, because that's what we are. And that's who we want to be around, and that's who we want to help. And it's a great group, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of it today. So thank you.
Awesome.
Michelangelo, if I can add just one thing clearly, Jason, thank you for bringing clarity to that, because really what you described is actionable solutions. And it's about taking separate components of a plan, but working together to make sure that our client, the business owner, has a place to go, knows what's next, and it's very clear what's going to happen and why, and how we've mitigated risk from a variety of perspectives, and we've made the business more profitable and protected them. So.
Absolutely. So, Michael, you've been doing this, like you said, 3 decades. People, I think, learn from stories, and stories resonate because we can sometimes put ourselves in the position of the person in the story. Share with us one or two, horror stories from the trenches of business owners that you know of, or maybe that you worked with, that they may have taken all of your advice, but didn't continue with the rest of the team, either by building their own team or plugging into your team. How have you seen things go wrong for business owners, and how would that have been different if they had actually brought the team together?
Well, we could have this conversation for hours on end, and I really enjoy this topic, but let's just give you one that becomes very, very clear. Let's take something as simple as a buy-sell. Okay, a buy-sell is, well, where two parties enter into agreement to decide what they're going to do with the business. The first question I always say is, let's look at your buy-sell. Let's understand how it works. And it never is real clear exactly what's going to happen. There's a lot of steps, but like I like to say, there's no clarity of action that we know what's going to happen. Well, in this particular case, we had two things go really wrong. The first was, like many business owners, they say, well, just give me some 10-year term insurance and we'll deal with this later. And now it's, later in time, and instead of buying the 5 million they needed, they got, the $1 million to get them over for the next couple of years, because they're short term in their thought process, and it was inexpensive, and let's get started, let's take action. And then what happened was, not only had the business grown in value, but also they hadn't followed the next step, where we had suggested holding the policies in a trust and having the attorney be there, so that way the trust was the center player of collecting the death benefits and collecting the stock to go forward. Well, in this particular case, once the one partner died, the other partner basically told the wife, too bad, so sad, I'm keeping the money, and it dropped into the corporation, and we're going to go ahead and just kind of freeze you out. And much litigation and expense later, they got a fraction of what they could have. Two things could have been avoided. One is listening to the attorneys to take all the steps necessary to make sure that all contingencies were covered, because humans being humans, they don't always ask, they typically only act in their own best interest, not in your best interest. And your business partner, while they may have great feelings for you, doesn't feel that way about your family. Two, it's very important to have regular valuations. Valuations aren't an expense. They're a planning tool to make sure that you know what's going on with the business and your contingencies. In this case, additional disability income or additional life insurance is being added to the plan. That's one story I can think of that it went all wrong and went on for many, many years, and no one was really satisfied with the end product, and they didn't get a buy-sell that worked. They had one, looked great on paper, but in practice, it failed.
Thank you. Jason, you have anything you've seen go wrong, even though maybe the client followed your piece of advice based on it not expanding out to other professionals?
Oh, for sure. It comes to not necessarily not following my advice, right? Yeah. I mean, I had a very recent situation where I was talking to a practice. I set up a medical practice. I set up, when she first started out in business 10 years ago. And we were talking recently about some expansion and some joint ventures. And I said, well, that's the same operating agreement I did for you 10 years ago. And it literally was in the same package, and I think had about 10 years worth of dust on top of it, because I'm pretty sure it's in the same location. And she very quickly said, and this is, I mean, when I tell you, provided medical services to my family, I've known this woman, but started off as a client, and had direct access to me. Calls me on the cell, will text me at whatever time, has been over to the house. That's still sitting there. And I knew she had some legal advice along the way. She had some partners. So I never interjected myself in there and said, it's always, touchy. We all know that. Like, we assume they're getting the right advice, and had great CPAs, and the business had grown considerably And she was talking about this new joint venture. And I said, but this is still the same one. And she said, well, yeah, well, we didn't need to change any of that. I said, well, yeah, your business has changed in every conceivable fashion. And this is a smart, highly educated medical doctor. So those of us that, have these assumptions of education, training, and the rest, you're like, it doesn't matter what you do. This is, as we were all talking, and it's all funny to me, each one of us talks in the field, which makes most people eyes glaze over pretty quickly. I don't know. And, sometimes Michelangelo does it to me. Stage stuff, let him, let the expert deal with it, but break it down to me in a way that it makes sense to me. Luckily, we speak a lot, some of the same language, and that's what we all do to break it down. And I had a conversation with her very quickly. Within 5 minutes, she was like, mother of goodness. She really ran the risk of losing the majority of the investment that had been put in the past 6 years. We were able to quickly rectify that, and good thing we had some partners that were amenable to these things. But it could have very easily gone the wrong direction. Had another call, interesting, yesterday. Just took on a brand new client that previously lost his entire company because he had to settle a lawsuit that he didn't really think he had to. Really didn't think he was facing any sort of liability, but got very quick and pretty good advice from his lawyer at the time that he had never once ever conceived of or done anything to keep up his corporate formalities. So he was a pass-through entity. He was commingling everything. And we've all talked about that as the dangers of happening. That was the first time I had really heard that specific story for that specific reason. The main reason why he had to settle and pay a couple $100,000, which wiped out that company, was because the shell wasn't there. And he knew he didn't have the formalities, and he had never done thing one. And we're not talking about big, high ticket price items too. And that, I know I've answered your question, but another thing to kind of cover over too, and I know that this will be helpful to all of us, is that we're all of the same mind. The difficult thing for all of us is, to a business owner, they hear about these services, and maybe I'm not at that level yet, they think, or maybe it's just too expensive for me. We are all evaluating it because we want to help make that business more profitable. We don't just want to be a cost. We want to help drive more production, more success. And that's what drives us. Yes, what we do is not cheap. We understand that. But it's not just an expense. We're looking towards the end game to push it to the next level and to help you and really get that real bang for your buck of, these are people that are helping us grow. I want these folks around me as my trusted advisors. I've got my dream team. That's who I'm calling to take the business to the next level. So, yeah.
Appreciate that. So I'll give you a quick example. From my perspective, I had a client who owned a pharmacy, or actually he started the pharmacy and had later brought on a minority partner in the pharmacy. All of his estate planning documents were awesome because I did them, and everything was ready to roll. Everything was going to roll right to his wife. Everything's great. And I had asked him, because again, I don't do this. I said, hey, do you guys have an operating agreement? Yeah. I set it up. I got something from like Sunbiz, or I downloaded a form when I set up the corporation for $186 or whatever it is. And so yes, I have an operating agreement. I said, okay, does that operating agreement contemplate your partner? And are there any rules about anything? And he was like, well, yeah, I amended it just to, give some of my shares to this partner. I said, okay. Do you guys have cross-sell agreements? Are you collateralized by insurance products? Again, I know enough only to be dangerous. I don't know if that's even appropriate for them, but I know enough to raise the issue and say, hey, here's a risk. And like you, Jason, I was like, go find someone to take care of that risk for you. Now I've gotten much better, and I can bring on my team and say, here's the person that I'm recommending that takes care of the risk. You don't have to use them, but it's a good idea. So what happened was, client died unexpectedly. Pharmacy was just killing it. They were making money. And of course, his interest in his shares automatically were assigned to his trust, probate avoidance, everything's fine. But the minority partner, I saw the opportunity for a freeze out and told the wife basically like, I'm basically quitting. And so I am going down the street and I'm going to open up my own pharmacy and I'm going to market all of our referral partners and I'm going to market all of our client database. And so effectively took a multi-million-dollar valuation business and instantly like eviscerated it to zero, went down the street, opened up his own pharmacy, 100% owner, made all of the money, took all of the relationships. The wife was left with a leased space that had nothing and had no value. And so even though the estate plan was awesome, without the coordinating legal structure and potentially advisory structure on the financial side, like it just fell apart. And so I felt horrible. And I mean, I guess I took some solace in that I did recommend that they button up these other areas. But, I still lost some sleep over it because I see this widow now, unexpected, which should have been entitled to well over $1 million in assets to raise her children, now having nothing because only part of the equation was done. So hopefully, this gives us, and on that side about going to like LegalZoom or going to just Sunbiz and setting up your corporation, don't do that, guys. I'm not the business law attorney, but I'll just tell you, I use Jason to open up my last two entities. And when I tell people that, when I'm referring him, they're like, well, you're a lawyer. Why don't you just, go on Sunbiz and set it up yourself? I'm like, because that's not what I do. I know what I'm good at. I know my lane and I stay in it. And I would prefer to pay some other professionals, time and effort to do these things. Because I know when I get an operating agreement from Jason, that it actually is something that has been reviewed. And I'll be honest, I put it on the shelf and don't look at it. That I'm guilty, as I think all business owners probably are. But at least I know it was done initially. And I know enough to say if there's any movement in this business or anything that's changed, I have a duty to go back to Jason and say, okay, make this happy, or is it still happy based on what you originally drafted? So an ongoing relationship, I think, is also one of the takeaways for today. Obviously, on the financial advisory side, if you have an advisor, or certainly, hopefully you have a CFP, you are meeting with them at least annually, if not quarterly. You're having consistent conversations because things in the financial world are changing. Certainly, if anybody's checked their portfolio in the last 3 months, you'll appreciate that sentiment. But things on the business law side, on the asset protection side, are changing. Statutes are changing. Case law decisions are coming out that sometimes turn on its head what was previously the go-to types of decisions. So I know Jason has recently implemented, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but some sort of an ongoing client retainer relationship, so that you do have the opportunity once or more per year to sit down with your business law attorney and say, hey, here's my space, it, you set it up. Has anything changed? Do you now recommend that I do something different? Everybody meets with their CPA, at least once a year to do their taxes. So you kind of get that at least during that time. And I know here at Mortellaro Law, we have implemented our legacy care program, which is modeled very much after what Michael does. It's an ongoing relationship. So once a year, we're sitting down with our clients because quite often, they're either opening new businesses. Entrepreneurs have a habit of doing that. So when they came to me, they had 2 businesses. I coordinated those with the estate plan. Haven't heard from them in 7 or 8 years. They've opened 3 or 4 businesses, sold the businesses that were in their trust, collecting dust, and then they die. And then I get a frantic call from their successor trustee of, hey, we're being told we needed probate. And, my spouse or my dad or my mom, they came to you and you were their attorney and you said you were going to keep them out of probate. And now, what happened? Well, time and things happened and I wasn't privy to them. I can only fix what I know. And I think I speak for everyone here today. We can only fix what we know. And so if you think that your relationship as a business owner with any of your professionals should be a one and done, you're sadly mistaken. It needs to be consistent, systematic, and ongoing, because over time, your life changes, your dynamics change, the law changes, the financial markets change, tax structures change. the only constant is change. And even though you're wrapped up in your business and adapting your profitability and your ongoing business operations to those changes, you have to be aware of what's going on around you. And it's crucially important that whoever you work with takes a holistic approach, really not only just uses lip service, but embodies the team environment and actually requires it to as far as we can require it. Because I know that it's not going to do as well if the team isn't present. And you don't have to use all the people in my team. You have your own CFP, you have your own business law attorney. That's great. All of us are professionals. We love working together, but we're totally willing to step onto a new team and play our role and do a really good job. So hopefully business owners can take that away. I appreciate both of your time today, gentlemen. Any parting words, Michael?
Yeah, you were describing something that you've heard me talk about, and that is as we deliver our promises to clients, it requires that we're meeting on a very regular basis. And so as we're listening to them, we're continuing to not only do what we say, but say what we do, so that you have the regularly scheduled meetings. And I know in the legal case, you want anytime there's an event in someone's life, or no less than once a year, to review everything. And depending on the clients we're working with and the complexity of their world, in most cases, we're meeting at least quarterly. And we're not just talking about one thing, we're talking about everything. And the reason that's important is that business owners don't just have a business and just personal assets. They have both, and they are intermingled. And so that complexity of the intermingling is why it takes a team and why it takes regular time. But thank you again for inviting me today.
Not a problem. Jason, what do you got? Final words.
So for cost benefit analysis, right? So Michelangelo and I are business owners. So we understand what we're putting out there. We wanted to have the cost benefit analysis for the client, right? So we're looking at exactly in those terms, exactly the way we hope you are as well. So we always understand that and propose it accordingly. And the other part of that is, we've all talked about it now, but I think it's such a good point to talk about it. As you guys were talking, I was thinking about this. Without that regular interaction, you don't even know. There's so many things that come across, and I'm talking about people of all different walks of life. It's not an intelligence thing. They don't think about things in the same way that we do. Time and time again, the closest relationships I have with clients, we'll sit down and have a conversation. They won't even realize they're saying that something that, clicks that button in my head, like, wait, what happened? Why, and without that interaction and without that close relationship, you really are doing your business a disservice, because there's so many things that can help protect, plan, and structure. And it doesn't have to be just when something bad happens, or just in my head, this event, now I got to go see the lawyer and it's a bad thing because, something bad happened. Without that ongoing relationship, I think you really are not getting, the most you can from that professional services relationship. And I know this team, and we've seen each other plug in and plug out on other teams. I'm very happy to be a part of this one, because it works very well that way. And really, at the end of the day, no one's concerned about being petty or driving up costs for this one specific thing. Everybody is looking at it long term, helping everybody flourish, and everybody is pivoting into different businesses and the rest. And some of us decided to do that on our own as well. And we like to be in that environment and help plan accordingly. So also, I will say thank you to Michelangelo for inviting me onto today's forum. And again, happy to be part of this team.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to many more of these events. I know that they're great because there's people watching live right now, but also they stay on our website. They stay on our YouTube. I'll send you guys the raw feeds. You're welcome to put it on your social media. And it's really about educating. I tell people all the time, like, if you're good at what you do, you're passionate about it, and you truly understand your craft, there's never a day of sales. It's every day's education. Because if you educate, especially business owners, I mean, they're typically relatively smart people, and they can grasp concepts. That's how they're able to run a successful business. If you give them the information, they're smart enough to say, I like that, and that, let's do it. But I think even though we're in this information, age where everything should be at our fingertips, it is astounding how many really smart people are missing huge opportunities or creating huge risks for themselves and their families. And if you are truly an entrepreneur and you run your business as your livelihood, the thought of you becoming disabled, the thought of you passing away, and then having little or nothing go to your beneficiaries, those people that you care about the most. I mean, we're talking about your spouse, your children, your charities, whatever's near and dear to your heart. You won't be here potentially to understand that if you pass away, but I think it's terrible. And so we're all dedicated to make sure that to the extent possible, we limit those risks. All right, guys. Well, we will catch up again, probably do another one of these next Friday. So stay tuned. We have plenty of topics to talk to about business owners. We have asset protection discussions. We have discussions for real property owners and investors on how to properly protect your assets when you're doing the real property entrepreneurship thing. So I appreciate both of your time, gentlemen. Have a safe and good holiday weekend, and we will touch base with you next week.
Thank you, Michelangelo. Jason, be well.
Thanks.